Hi everyone, my name is Emily and I'm the Young Adult Librarian at the Rock Island Public Library. And today, the book I'm going to tell you about is Dead Mountain, the untold true story of the Dyatlov Pass incident. So, this is a book that is nonfiction. This is a real thing that happened, and the story takes place in February of 1959, so long time ago. But in this book, the story of the Dyatlov Pass is that there was this group of hikers. There were 10 of them. They were all college students in Russia, the Soviet Union at that time. So something that was very popular in this time was camping and hiking because, there's many beautiful places in Russia. There's lots of amazing wilderness to explore and scenery to see. But in 1959, the other thing was that, if I go out camping with my friends, we can talk about whatever we want and we don't have to worry about people overhearing our conversations or wondering hey, are they talking about a book that's illegal, or what's up? So the 10 people in this group, 2 women, 8 men, were all students at Ural Polytechnic Institute. And this was a school where, most of the students that were studying science, they were studying different science fields. And what this meant was one person in the group actually could build a radio. I think they had radio with them, the kind you could listen with. They couldn't call people with it. But what happened on their trip is they headed for what was called Dead Mountain. This was a place in northern Russia, and this is winter. They're going to be winter camping, which is a lot, even if you don't live in a place as cold as this region of Russia was. But, they were all experienced hikers and experienced campers. In fact, they were going on this trip in part so they could be certified to lead other groups. This is part of what these people wanted to do. They wanted to get certified in the next level of camping and hiking. There were levels, if you did this, you had to let the school kind of know what you were doing. But, this was an organized activity where people could have some freedom. So, they had to not just ride. There wasn't a train that would take them the whole way. They had to walk and ski. They got rides. I think somebody gave them a ride in a truck at one point, so they didn't have to cross country ski the whole way. But at the last stop, before they were gonna just ski up this mountain, the 10th person in the group, a guy named Yudin, he was not feeling well. He kind of had an illness for a while that had just, he wasn't feeling great, and he wasn't getting better. So he said before they were going to ski up this mountain, hey guys, I'm not feeling good, and I don't want to slow you down. I think I'm just going to go back. I'll go back, and then I'll see you after winter break is over. So his friend said, oh, okay, I'm sorry, yeah, that's too bad, but we'll take lots of pictures and we'll see you in a few weeks. So this trip started January 1959. By February, a few weeks later, school was starting again. The college was starting a new semester. And none of the 9 hikers who had gone up to Dead Mountain had come back. They were supposed to be at school. School was starting. Where were they? So at first, the idea was, well, probably there was a storm up on the mountain and they were delayed. Maybe they had to hunker down and they couldn't get a train back yet because, again, they had to ski up and down this mountain. Many things could have slowed them down, especially weather. But, as time passed, it became increasingly clear, no, they never came back to the station. We haven't seen these people, we need to, somebody needs to go up the mountain, search for them because they could be in trouble. So a search party was organized, and different local people, they went up the mountain to try and find out, where the hikers were, if there was any trace of them. Well, they were found almost immediately. Unfortunately, all 9 of them were dead. Now, this is the part of the story that makes it memorable. This is why it's sort of a famous true crime story. The thing that happened up at what is now called Dyatlov Pass, it was named in honor of the leader of the group. Dyatlov was his name, and him dying on this mountain was the reason the pass is called that now. He and everybody else in the group, they were found dead, and there were a lot of unusual things about the scene of these deaths. First of all, nobody was wearing boots. And when they did an analysis of the tent, they did, like, literally, the tent was cut. Okay, there was no more shelter. The shelter they had somehow been destroyed. And at first people thought, whoa, did somebody, like, cut into these kids' tent and, like, chase them out? No. They did an analysis of the fabric, and what they found was, based on the way the fibers were positioned, that the tent had been cut from the inside. And so the boots of the 9 hikers, they were in there. But when they found the bodies, okay, no boots. In fact, a lot of them, like, they weren't dressed for being outside, which, I mean, a lot of them, like, were far from the tent. Some were relatively close, but basically they'd all run outside for some reason. They'd run out of their tent at night in Russia in the winter, and they didn't have boots on. They didn't have, like, enough clothing to survive very long, Like, some of them died of hypothermia, others died of different stuff. And, I mean, again, some of the bodies, when they were examined, it's like, well, okay, this person has, like, a skull fracture, this person has broken bones, like some kind of traumatic injuries from something that happened. And another thing about this case, all of the bodies were slightly radioactive, so that was strange. And one of the hikers, one of the 2 women, she was missing her tongue. So when people heard about this, there were a lot of questions, naturally. Why did 9 experienced hikers/campers run out of their tent, into weather that would kill them? Like, what made them do that? And people thought, oh, well, maybe it was a bear. Well, I mean, these injuries weren't consistent with a bear attack. Like, again, the only person who was, like, missing something, the only person who seemingly had something eaten off of them was the tongue. Girl who was missing her tongue. There were some traumatic injuries, but, from what they could tell of the scene, this was based on a fall. This was like an impact from falling. This wasn't just like a snow-covered mountain. There were some parts where it was steep, and some of these people could have, like, slipped and fallen and then been injured and ultimately died that way. Other people too, there were signs that a couple people in the group, like, they tried, once they apparently realized what they had done. It seems like, oh, okay, these people maybe put on some other clothes because they're a little bit better dressed than the others in the group, but still not adequately dressed for conditions. And, from what we can tell, they tried to start a fire, but they couldn't. Like, they couldn't get back to the tent. Once they were out of there, I mean, that was it. They couldn't find it on this dark and snowy night. So, like, what made them do this? Like, were they driven from the tent? Like, what could have come after them? Was it a bear? Again, we didn't find any animal tracks. So, like, what was the cause of this? So, in this book, filmmaker Donnie Icar, he went back with, remember, the 10th guy. His name was Yudin. And, he was a college student at this time. He eventually joined the search party, and he had to spend the rest of his life kind of wondering, what happened to my friends? Like, 9 of my friends died, and nobody knows why. Like, we still don't totally know. But this book offers a pretty compelling explanation for what happened. By the end of the book, based on what we know of the terrain, this place, Dead Mountain, and what can happen with wind under these circumstances, it's like, okay, the explanation that the author gives, it makes sense, but it's still, a deeply unsettling story of people who were well equipped to survive, or, experienced at surviving under these kinds of conditions, encountering something not supernatural necessarily, probably, again, if you read the book, you'll find that there's a detailed scientific explanation for what happened. But, I mean, anybody under these circumstances might well have died the same way. Like, this wasn't something where if you encountered it, you'd know right away, oh, it's this thing, and I don't have to worry. Like, no, this wasn't something, that at the time the people involved could have explained. They just, they did what they thought seemed the safest thing at the time, and it ended up killing them. So if you like true crime, or if you like, just sort of kind of unsolved mysteries type of stories, this is a great nonfiction book about this thing that happened a long time ago, but that people are still fascinated by, because, there's a lot of questions in the story, and people are still looking for answers. Thus, this book, all these years later, where Donnie Icar, he was working with Yuden, the 10th guy in the group, because he's an old man at this point, and he's like, hey, before I die, I really just kind of want to know what happened to my friends. So, check it out. This book is available. You can borrow it from the library as a physical book. I don't think any of our ebook apps have it available, but if you want to read it, check it out. You sure can. And thanks for watching. I will see you again next week.